Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3.
Yeah, so this is the new setup. We've got people joining online here so that the front screens and everything are completely dedicated to the presentation. So you're going to be switching back and forth. I think it's working really well.
So those COVID guys, well, I guess that's it.
A mix of colors.
Yeah, who cares when it comes to
As long as it's in the bank, right? November is his birthday. Sorry? I'm a summer. I'm a summer birthday. Happy birthday. Let's see. It's summer and then once in the fall. I've got my 1-year-old about to have his birthday party May 23rd.
Got so quiet. If I could have your attention, please, I'd like to call to order this Board of Trustees of Blinn College District meeting for Tuesday, April the 20th. It is now the appointed time to begin our meeting. Before we start, I'd like to make the following announcements. The public access to this meeting will occur in rooms 2 and 3 of the Blinn College District Student Center on Blinn Boulevard. Any member of the public who wishes to attend the meeting or make public comment of the meeting will need to do so in rooms 2 and 3 of the Student Center. As required by state law, this meeting is open to the public, but by telephonic communication. The college is complying with the suspended proceedings of the Open Meetings Act in accordance with Section 418.016 of the Texas Government Code. Members of the public are entitled to participate and address the college through the remote connection. A live stream of this meeting will be available on YouTube. Let me also mention that the Texas Government Code permits the Board of Trustees to meet in closed executive session for the following reasons: to consult with the college district's attorneys on matters deemed privileged by the Texas Disciplinary Rules of Professional Conduct or Government Code 551.071, to deliberate regarding real property under 551.072, a prospective gift under 551.073, certain personnel matters under 551.074, security devices for security audits under 551.076, and economic development negotiation under 551.087. If the board meets in closed session, which we will today, we will announce the particular section under which we will be doing so prior to initiating the closed portion of the meeting. I'd now like to have opening our meeting and ask Reverend Randy Rails if he would give our invocation, and Mrs. Bain would lead us in the pledge to the flags. If you would stand, please.
Let us pray. Father God, in the name of Jesus, we bow in your presence and we thank you for this spring as the semester comes to an end and we see the bluebonnets blooming all over the campus. We thank you, God, for the students. We ask that they have good success toward the end of this semester. We thank you for our chancellor, for our staff. We thank you, God, for the community overall that supports us. And we ask that you bless this board as we deliberate over these issues. In Jesus Christ's name, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. On the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you, That brings us to item 3, which would be public comment, and it's been reported that there is no one wishes to speak under the public comment section. So that takes us directly to number 4, which is our reports, and I'll ask Chancellor Hensley if she would give her administrative report.
Thank you, Chair Mosher, and good everyone. Good morning. Trustees, we have some outstanding accomplishments to share with you today, beginning with our cheer team, which won its 8th consecutive national championship earlier this month. Blinn captured first place in team performance with a score of 93.96 in the junior college division and placed second in the Palm Open competition with a score of 88.06. The cheer team placed second in the advanced small co-ed with a score of 93.76. I'd like to congratulate Athletic Director Scott Schumacher and our Spirit Coordinator Sarah Fulsofsky and Assistant Cheer Coach Cassidy Leach. And of course, the dance and cheer teams weren't the only teams to represent Blinn on a national stage last week. Blinn's volleyball team traveled to West Plains, Missouri to compete in the NJCAA Volleyball Championships, where they won 3 of 4 matches to place 5th in the nation. The Buccaneers defeated Western Nebraska Community College in the first round, and after a 5-set loss to number 1 ranked Miami-Dade, they beat Utah State East and Odessa College to finish among the top 5 in the United States. I'd like to again congratulate Scott Schumacher, head coach Terry Gamble, and assistant coach Becky Fletcher on another outstanding season of the Buccaneer volleyball. A website, Trustees, that provides free resources for students seeking information about business colleges has ranked Blinn's accounting and business programs among the best value in the state. The businessdegreecentral.com ranked Blinn's accounting program the 3rd best value among Texas accounting degree programs, and its business program the 4th best value among business degree programs. The site also ranked Blinn the 13th best value among both real estate and business administration and management schools. The rankings were developed based on information from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics and the National Center for Education Statistics. And I'd like to congratulate Dr. Charles Smith, Dean of the Division of Business and Mathematics, and Assistant Dean Marshall Rich. And now some more awards. Trustees, 7 Blinn College faculty and staff recently received excellence awards from the National Institute for Staff and Organizational Development, commonly known as NISOD, in recognition of their outstanding commitment to their students and colleagues. Blinn's 2021 honorees include Kim Boker, Division Operations Coordinator for Business and Mathematics, Myron Dipple, Assistant Director of Housing, Kathy Holtkamp, Library Technical Assistant, Dr. Candice Melzow, English Instructor, Dr. Shelley Peacock, Assistant Dean for Visual Performing Arts and Kinesiology, Rose Springfield, Academic Advisor, and Leah Wright, Veterinary Technology Program Clinical Coordinator. Each winner, trustees, will be recognized during NISOD's International Conference on Teaching and Learning Excellence, which will be held virtually April the 28th through April the 30th. And now for our facilities update. On the Brenham campus, construction of the Science, Technology, Engineering, and Innovation Building remains on schedule to open this fall for the fall 2021 semester. The contractor has begun the interior finish work, including painting, acoustical ceilings, and casework. The exterior brickwork and the glazing remain on schedule, and the building HVAC system is now on to allow for the interior finishes. And over at our P3 housing, at that facility, construction remains on schedule for substantial completion in June 2022 and final completion in time for the fall 22 semester. Current activities include the construction of under-slab utilities, installation of the detention pond, and development of a concrete slab for Building A. And now to our baseball field. At Leroy Dreyer Field, the architect has finalized the design for Phase 1, and the design package is scheduled to be brought to the board for discussion, review, and potential final approval at the May board meeting. This project is scheduled for completion for the fall 2022 semester. And at the Spencer Field Block on the Brenham campus, the architects have finalized their design drawings and are submitting these to the contractor for final pricing. Quotes from demolition contractors have been requested using interlocal agreements, and we expect to receive those by April the 23rd. Coordination meetings to plan the moves are underway, with the football team scheduled to move out of the field house in the middle of May. And the abatement and demolition is scheduled for completion in early June. Once the completion is complete, once the demolition is complete, updates to the Spencer block then will take place with completion scheduled by this August. So that'll be exciting. And then I'd like to give you some updates regarding our winter storm repairs. At the old main building on the Brenham campus, the furniture assessment has been completed, and all the furniture on the first 3 floors has either been moved into storage or disposed of based on the results of their assessment of their condition. Architect Studio has been hired as the architect to assist in the coordination with the Texas Historical Commission. And then at Wheeler Hall, the architect and the contractor are developing the scope of work and design and the cost and the schedule. The content assessment is complete with very little loss of furniture, I'm happy to say, and undamaged furniture was already has been relocated to the south wing for storage as we renovate that building. And then at the BRYAN campus buildings D and G, all the remediation demolition has already occurred and is complete. And our wonderful facility staff, Mark and Richard, thank you so much for all that you've done. You're working now with Architect Studios to develop a scope of work, I think, for the remaining issues. So you all have done a magnificent job with a lot of challenges ahead, and I publicly thank you for your great effort. And then at the RELLIS campus, Bartlett Koch Trustees has excavated the footprint for the Phase 2 administrative building and has mobilized a crane to begin the drilling piers. And then the design team has begun meetings to refine the design of the fixtures and the furnishings and the equipment. And as you know, this facility is scheduled to open for the fall 22 semester. So you have a lot going on, all very exciting. At this time, trustees, that concludes my report, and I'll be happy to return the podium to Chair Mosier. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? All right, that brings us to the presentation of the financial statement package for the period ending March 31. Mr. Cervantes.
Well, how about this one? There we go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Dr. Hensley, members of the board. I'm going to go through this as quickly as possible. We have, this report is through the month of March 2021, which means it's the 7th month of the fiscal year at 58%. Our revenue this year through the month of March is $88.2 million. Our expenses are at $61.4 million, which leaves us a net of $26.8 million. Just a note, we have included some of the federal money, which has been a substantial amount, over $10 million. It's included in this other category, and that's attributing to a large part on the $26.8 million. When we compare this to last year at the same period of time, our revenues are up $3.3 million. Our expenses, however, the good news is down $3.9 million, but still leaves us a net increase in fund balance of $7.2 million more than what we had last year at the same period in time. Comparing by source is still difficult because on the far right, as you can see, the other category, which includes all the federal money, it distorts some of the percentages. But tuition is down, fees is about the same, and auxiliaries is down also. Comparing the tuition and fees revenue to our budget. We had $58 million that we had budgeted, and we're at 50, which is at 86.1% of our budget. Last year at this time, we were at 73.6, but we had quite a bit more in the revenue that we had budgeted. Our tuition revenue, as I said earlier, is down $2.3 million across the board, in district, out of district, and also out of state. The largest part of that is still our out of district. Our fee revenues somewhat offset. The general fees are down 1.4, but the lab course fees are up close to 1.4. So pretty close to the same, or it offsets. Housing and food service revenue, we had budgeted $9.4 million. To date, we had 5.8, which is at 62%. A lot of the social distancing that we had done has resulted in a decline in revenues for those. So our auxiliary revenues are down by $4 million. Housing, food service, bookstore, parking, across the board, all of those are decreases. The good news is that we've been able to allocate a good portion of that to our federal reserves, our federal money. Looking at our total expenses, as I said earlier, we're down 3.9%, which is good news. Most of that is coming from E&G, as we would expect, the travel expenditures being cut, consumables, utilities being cut. So the $2.6 million of that is coming from that one. Our expenses by category are also somewhat hard to compare to previous years. The salary and wage is still the largest one, but because you're down $3.9 million, and then there's some other variables we've not included, R&R, which is we're budgeting somewhere else, that it throws some of this off. Comparing by category, the 3.9 ends up being 6%. There's the R&R that I talked about that we budgeted outside. You see it's at zero. Salaries and benefits, of course, this is up. Operating expense is down $2.9 million, or almost 5%. Auxiliaries on the far right is the biggest portion of that. Student cash and refunds in March, we received $1.7 million in funds. We were able to move some of the Department of Education money, get us reimbursed for $4.5 million. Most of that is student refunds that we had issued on the far right, $4.3 million. Our CARES funding that you see on the left, we had $780,000 that came in, and then right below that, $780,000 that went out. So that's federal money that we issued to student grants. And then we had student payments that we had reimbursed at student payments actually that had come to us of $1.6 million. Our other cash receipts in March, we received $8.2 million. State appropriations at $2.3 million. We drew down some bond funds to pay for some of the capital projects that the Chancellor mentioned, almost $1.5 million. We also reimbursed ourselves some federal money of $3.9 million. Some of that is lost revenue. It's not just all reimbursement. And then almost $500,000 in grants and contracts. Our use of cash in March is $10.3 million. Payroll is still leading the way at $5.6 million. Some of the construction activity, 2.2, and then our operations and accounts payable, almost $2.5 million. To sum it up, we had $1.7 million that we received from students. We received cash, $8.2 million. Our use of cash is $10.3 million, led to a net decrease in cash for the month of March of $367,000. I see on the bottom, there was $15 million at the end of the month that was in our bank. A portion of that was going to be used for almost the very next day. April 1st, we had to make a payment of $4 million in bonds, interest. Unrestricted cash and cash equivalents, all-time high. I keep saying that every month, seems like $113 million. Our student awards, this is the federal money that we had received. On the far left are the first allocation. They're now calling this because I guess they're running out of different names and they want to try to give it something more consistent. Higher Ed Emergency Relief Funds, HERF. So we're going to start changing some of these names. So HERF 1 was the CARES, and We received that $7.1 million back last year, right a little bit, a couple months later from now, and ended up spending it before the fall even began, issuing those student grants to students. The Carissa came in December, and we are slowly getting that out, or slowly getting to the end of that. We're at $5.8 million. It's getting a little bit tougher for us, but we're working our way through it. Institutional funding, the far left, CARES institution, we've used all that up. They gave us $7 million, $7.1 million in the Carissa that we received in December. We were waiting. They gave us $12.3 million, waiting a little bit for some of these definitions to come out. They came out in our favor. They allowed us much more flexibility. Lost revenue is the biggest portion of it. So right now we've spent $4.1 million, or we've received that money back from the federal government. We expect that we'll be able to get the rest of that used up by the end of the semester, or maybe even by the end of next month. CARES institutional strengthening, both of those two, CARES institutional strengthening and Carissa institutional strengthening, they had from the very get-go some flexibility that we did not have in the larger one, and that is the ability to reimburse ourselves for lost revenue. And so most of that is applied towards auxiliary lost revenue. As we said earlier, we had quite a bit of that. Concludes my presentation. Mr. Chairman, I'll stand for any questions.
Yes. The Carissa institutional funds that was up there was about $8 million that's unspent. Are those funds restricted in any way?
They are, Mr. Bohart, they are restricted at the beginning. So, and it's a reimbursement sort of thing. So we have money that's sitting out there in an account for us. The $12.3 million is sitting there in the Department of Education's money. So once we use that, if we have something that's allowable, an expense that's allowable, we're then allowed to be able to draw that down. So the restricted part is the allowable portion. What is allowable, and what has been allowable hasn't been completely defined recently. They gave us a lot more definition. We were waiting, quite honestly, to try to move that money towards lost revenue, because that's better for us than reimbursement. It actually will then, as we see it, ultimately flow down to the bottom line, and then it becomes totally unrestricted.
So when you say it's lost revenue that you're replenishing, is that the same as actually increasing unrestricted reserves?
You wouldn't say it's equal to it, but you would say ultimately that's where it ends up.
Okay, so you're not spending those funds, it's basically
I mean,
increasing.
can I say, just give you an illustration? Let's say we lost $3 million, as I've said, in auxiliary revenue. And so I get to say that's allowable. And so I put in the paperwork to the federal government to reimburse that $3 million. So it comes in as revenue. There's no offsetting expense, so it flows down to the bottom.
So it's free money.
It's good money, Mr. Bohart.
Any other questions? Mr. Savani, early on, did you say that over last year for that time period, the tuition revenue was down by $2 million or so?
Yes, it is down.
Just a timing thing, or is that a people?
That's that, Mr. Chairman. That is all enrollment being down. It was down it was down in the fall, and then it's down again in the spring. So tuition in both of those categories, all the categories, out of district, in district, out of state, all of those have not had as much tuition as we have had in previous years, largely because we've restricted things. COVID has had that kind of impact on us. But the good news is that all of that is reimbursed by the federal government. So, and then flows down to the bottom line.
Yeah.
Did Blinn have access to an employee retention program like a lot of small businesses
There were, Mr. Colcourse, there weren't any direct revenues, I should say, that were but however, the stipulation in the award, in the grant, is that all the employees were required to remain employed. And so, and in some instances where we've had, I get too much into the weeds, but in some instances where we've had some employees that could not come to work during periods of time because we had shut everything down. And the only way that they can perform their work was to come on campus. In those cases, we've asked the federal government to reimburse us because it was their requirement that we maintain all employees. So we got reimbursed.
May I add to those, just so the trustees will understand? At Blinn, we took the approach that no employee would lose his or her job. So every employee who was previously employed a year ago is still employed, unless, of course, they retired or resigned on their own accord. Not all colleges have been able to do that, so it's something we're very proud of for Blinn.
And I should add, to follow up on Dr. Hensley's comment, those decisions were made before the federal government was telling us things. We had a philosophical intention of maintaining all of our employees.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, okay, that brings us to the presentation of the update on the district-wide facilities master plan. And Mr. Savani, you're going to Richard O'Malley going to kick that off. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mosier, Dr. Hensley, members of the board. We've got an exciting item this morning to talk about our district-wide facilities master plan that we've been working on for the last 8 months. We're joined here today with Alan Collier and Meredith Epley McWilliams with the Gensler team that provided the consulting services on the master plan. I'm going to invite them up for the update and give you a vision into our timeline. After today's meeting and that update, we plan to bring back the final document next month at the May meeting for formal approval. Thank you.
Richard.
And as a note, as you're presenting today, if you're at the podium, you can remove your mask during that discussion period. Thank you.
Chairman Mosier, Dr. Hensley, board, it is very good to be back before you to present the district-wide facilities master plan. You've seen this before. This is where we are today. We began last September on the master plan, and as you can see, there's been a lot of activity from parallel studies that all fed into the master plan, and the sort of the storyline of all the meetings that we've had with different constituents of the district itself. You've also seen this one, but it's just a reminder as to what went into this master plan. And as I mentioned, there were parallel studies. So we had the facility condition assessment go on that, again, looked at what you had within your district and the condition it was in. And at the same time, we were doing studies on spatialization and growth projections based on demographic studies. And that was, you know, what do you currently have and how effectively are you using those facilities and what new facilities will be needed in the future. And then ultimately, those all fed into that middle arrow, which is the consolidation of all of the information that was generated during this study and what the outcomes would be for the next 5, 10, and 20 years for the district. The plan is also broken into 3 development phases. As I mentioned just a moment ago, it's the 5-year, the 10-year, and the 20-year plan. The first phase, phase 1, is the implementation phase. And that is where the information that's derived from the facility condition assessment, the spatialization, and your growth projections identifies what needs to be done, what is most critical to happen in this first 5 years beginning today. The second phase is the positioning phase. And that, again, is something that we feel is very imminent for the district, based on all of the studies that came out. And that is also a very important consideration as you look at the strategies for the next 5 to 10 years. The last phase, the horizon phase, and we know the world changes dramatically over time. And so it is more something for the district to really look towards and to still plan for, but it's flexible enough to adjust to different market demands, economic strategies, funding mechanisms, et cetera. We also mentioned that there was a robust stakeholder engagement, and this is the first district-wide multi-campus master plan, I believe, ever done that was totally virtual. All of the meetings, all of the workshops that we would have done, in the same room with your team, we were able to accomplish through virtually. And here are just a couple of shots of not only the posters that were generated in working with your various teams, but just showing you how we were able to accomplish this using Zoom and Microsoft Teams. And we were able to get good feedback and good insight from your teams in this manner. I don't expect you to read it. Gosh knows I couldn't read this, but I will say this is just here to help illustrate the amount of people within the Blinn College District that were engaged throughout this process. We listened, we heard you, and I think the resultant plan is one that really reflects the vision and the objectives of Blinn College. What the master plan has become is actually 2 volumes. Volume 1 is the one, it's really telling the story, a compelling story of need for Blinn College District over the next 5, 10, and 20 years. The second volume is all of the data that came out of the facility condition assessments, again, in very detailed format of the condition of your buildings. It also looked at the space utilization, the growth projections, all the information that feeds into volume 1 is in volume 2. I'm going to ask Meredith Epley McWilliams, who is the senior planner for this master plan, to come up and now walk you through some of the findings of the master plan itself.
Thank you, Alan. Hi there, everybody. It's nice to see you today. Before I jump in, I'll answer the question I'm sure is on all your minds. I did not intentionally dress to match our presentation today, but I must have woken up with Blinn blue on my mind, so here I am. I also want to mention, before we jump into some more of the detail, that this master plan is really meant to be a roadmap. It's a living document. So what we will deliver on paper is a snapshot in time of the vision for Blinn College, but we fully expect that it will evolve. It is a flexible plan that can adapt as needs change for Blinn College over time. So the plan today is we're going to do an overview of some of the studies that Alan mentioned. We've presented some of those studies previously. First, we'll give a recap of the facility condition assessment that was prepared by LAN, one of our consultants. Then we will give a recap of some of the demographics and utilization studies done by facilities programming and consulting. And then we'll spend the majority of our time today walking through the physical campus plans for your 5 campuses. So let's begin with the facility condition assessment. You've seen this slide before, I think from the January board meeting, but to recap what LAN did as part of their study, they focused on your 2 largest and most mature campuses, BRYAN and BRENHAM. They looked at 53 facilities, which amounted to just over 1 million square feet of building space. That covered a range of building uses, as you see listed here, and their analysis took into account a range of major building systems as listed on this slide. And they did that through in-person facility assessments, drawing review, and also maintenance interviews with your facilities staff. The key indicators that came out of their study There are two of them, the Facility Condition Index, or FCI. That's an indication of the current needs of your facilities. The second one, the Requirement Index, or RI, is an indication of the needs that are anticipated over the next 5 years. So, very high level, we're summarizing findings for each of your campuses. Starting with Brenham, LAN found the overall condition of the facilities here to be fair. Average building age is 38 years old. So FCI, again, indicating current condition of the facilities is at 14%, which is generally understood to be fair to good. 40% on these indicators represents sort of a tipping point at which you might want to consider significant renovations or even possibly replacement of facilities. So you see that looking at that next indicator, an RI of 32% looking ahead at the next 5 years, that's where the metric jumps up and really starts to indicate that on this campus, you do have several facilities where we anticipate the need for replacement or substantial renovation, largely due to the fact that these buildings are 50 plus years old. Looking ahead at the next 5 years, the priority items on this campus are identified as interior finishes and HVAC systems. These are systems that are really reaching the end of their expected useful life. Some electrical capacity issues were also identified as a part of this study on this campus. Moving to the BRYAN campus, overall condition of facilities there was assessed to be pretty good. Your facilities are newer, and I think in large part due to that, the FCI index was quite low, indicating that they are in pretty good shape. But you see again that RI indicator jumps up to almost 30%, showing that over the next 5 years, we do see some building systems, again, reaching the end of their useful life and will need some attention there. So most immediate needs at BRYAN are some interior finishes and roofing renewal and replacement. Looking ahead at the next 5 years, there will be some additional interior finish needs, HVAC system needs, and electrical and plumbing needs. To summarize, on the facility condition assessment portion of the study, we have some high-level takeaways here. Looking at building conditions, the majority of the immediate needs that were assessed are located on the Brenham campus, and most specifically, the residence halls are some of the oldest and most in need of immediate attention. Classroom and training space, multi-purpose spaces, and housing will require additional investment over the next 5 years as well. And as we've said, most of those needs, if we sort by building system, fall into the categories of HVAC and interior finishes. In terms of recommendations, number one that we have listed here is to maintain, update, and also expand the FCA database that LAN has created for Blinn College. This is a live database that some of your facilities folks have been trained to use and can continue to use going forward. We also recommend maintaining a regimented preventive maintenance program going forward for your existing building inventory, replacing building systems as they reach their expected useful life, and of course, ensuring compliance with applicable building codes. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and move to an overview of the next study that was a part of the master plan, which is our campus growth projections. And again, we have presented most of this material in greater detail in previous board meetings. So this is going to be a higher level recap of this material. All of the detail will, of course, be in the final published report. So we'll look first at some metrics district-wide and then take a look at each one of your campuses. with a couple of highlights. And you'll see these slides follow parallel format of the different studies that were undertaken by facilities programming and consulting. Looking at the demographic analysis of the district, we see that over 71% of your students originate from outside of the Blinn College service area. Looking specifically at the age 18 to 64 age cohort, that comprises 65% of the population in your service area, and a growth rate, a compound annual growth rate of 1% is projected for that age cohort over the next 10 years. As we move down the slide, looking at existing space utilization, you'll see we've used kind of a red light, green light indicator to suggest how well your existing space inventory is being used. So overall, what we found is that all of your campuses except RELLIS have an adequate amount of instructional space currently to accommodate your current enrollment and also near-term enrollment growth. So you can accommodate increased enrollment district-wide with the space that you already have. Looking at enrollment district-wide, we're projecting a rate of approximately 1.3% compound annual growth across the district. And for the purposes of our study, we have focused on on-campus and hybrid enrollment, so those students who are enrolled in a combination of on-campus and online classes, because that enrollment is the type that has the greatest impact on your physical space needs on your campuses. So right now, those numbers are at just about 15,000 students district-wide. The projections looking 10 years out at 2030 are at about 18,200 students, and looking 20 years out, the projections show 19,600 students. In terms of space needs, this was evaluated based on THECB space standards. So a current shortfall of 632,000 square feet was projected of E&G, or education in general space. The greatest space needs are identified at the BRYAN and RELLIS campuses. Through the implication of all the projects proposed in the master plan that we'll talk through later today, we will cut into that shortfall and reduce it to about 250,000 square feet of need. When we look at the details specific to the Brenham campus, again, starting with demographics, almost 2/3, or I should say more than 2/3 of the students at that campus originate from outside of the Blinn College service area. Most of them are coming from the Houston area. Space utilization on this campus is well below THECB targets, and we found that utilization could be improved by scheduling more classes and labs on Fridays, in the evenings after 4 p.m., or even on weekends. But again, on this campus, you do have some existing space inventory to support some future enrollment. Enrollment is projected to go up by about 1%. And part of what we discussed as part of the master plan is that that could go up even more as we increase the percentage of on-campus housing available to students on this campus. In terms of space needs, you have a surplus of E&G space on this campus. As we look at taking some of the older buildings offline in response to the findings of the FCA, we will reduce that surplus a little bit. So we'll be building back some of it, some of those older facilities with newer ones that are more closely aligned with current instructional needs, but you'll still have a surplus on this campus. As we look at BRYAN, demographic story is very much the same. You still have a vast majority of students originating from outside the service area, in this case, mostly from College Station in Houston. Space utilization right now is fair to good. compared to THECB standards, but you could still improve by scheduling more classes, again, on Fridays or on the weekends. Enrollment on this campus is projected to grow by almost 2% compounded year over year. But as a part of the master planning process, we've discussed setting a target enrollment for the Bryan campus at 9,500 students in order to avoid some of the congestion issues that have been historically experienced here when enrollment was higher. So we'll see on the next slide how that impacts growth on the RELLIS campus. As far as space needs, you are currently operating in a deficit on the Bryan campus. You're operating very efficiently, and that is not necessarily a bad thing. Many learning institutions are doing the same thing. Right now, the deficit on that campus, again, based on the THECP targets, is projected at almost 450,000 square feet of space. We do cut into that and reduce it with some of the proposed master plan projects down to about 392,000 square feet need. Moving along to look at the RELLIS campus, again, vast majority of students coming from outside of the service area, from Houston and a smattering of other areas. In terms of space utilization, because this is a new and growing campus, it is not really a surprise that utilization is exceeding the targets on this campus. And we know that as the administration building, the phase 2 building that is now under construction comes online, that will help to mitigate overutilization of your space on this campus. Enrollment is projected to grow quite a bit, more than any other campus, at a rate of about 6.7%. This is due in part to the target enrollment that was set for the Bryan campus. Any additional enrollment that was projected at Bryan has been reallocated to growth on the RELLIS campus as a part of this study. In terms of space needs, again, because this is a new and growing campus, it's not really a surprise to see that there is a significant shortfall of space projected for this campus of 324,000 square feet of space through the implementation of the master plan projects that are proposed. 20 years out, we end up with actually a slight surplus of space on this campus. Moving next to the Schulenburg campus. Schulenburg and Sealy tell a slightly different story in terms of the demographics. They follow a much more traditional commuter-based community college type of model. In the case of Schulenburg, 52% of students still originate from outside of the service area, but that is, I think, largely due in part to the fact that it is located quite close to the edge of the service area boundary. But most students do live within 40 miles of that campus. In the case of this campus, space utilization is well below THECB targets. And looking at long-term enrollment, it is actually projected to decline by almost a third to 106 students over the next 20 years. In terms of space needs, you have a surplus of space projected on this campus. So as we'll see later, all of this sort of tells us that there's not a whole lot of need for additional space or projects on this campus. And finally, looking at Sealy, demographics-wise, again, follows more of a traditional community college model. 69% of students at this campus originate from inside the service area boundary and within 40 miles of the campus. Similar to Schulenburg, utilization on this campus is well below targets, and enrollment is projected to remain flat over the next 20 years with an increase of only 6 students projected. In terms of space need, a shortfall of only about 1,000 square feet is projected, which is, not particularly significant in terms of looking at additional projects for this campus. So as you'll see, we have not identified any new master plan projects at Sealy. So with that, as a little bit of background for you, we're going to walk next through each of the projects that are proposed for the master plan, framed by the 3 development phases that Alan covered earlier. We arrived at the list of master plan projects by taking into account the outcomes of the facility condition assessment, all of the space needs projections, and of course, the vision that we heard from everybody who participated in the master planning process. We have sorted all of the proposed projects into 4 categories: new construction, renovation, enhancement projects, which are generally sort of site improvement type projects, and demolitions. So what you see here, I don't expect you to read the words. We'll cover each of the projects as we get into later slides for each phase, but this is the overall project phasing matrix that was developed for all of the projects that are a part of this district-wide master plan. So the 3 columns represent the 3 master plan phases, and then going across, you see the Brenham campus projects, phase 1, 2, and 3 up here. The middle row is all of the projects for the BRYAN campus. And down at the bottom, we've got all of the projects identified for the RELLIS campus. And as I mentioned earlier, I've not identified any new physical facility projects for the Sealy or Schulenburg campuses. So the conversation that we'll have about those campuses here in a little bit will be a little bit of a different one in nature. So we'll start first with the Brenham campus. I'm going to walk you through the development over the 3 phases. And I'll note one of the things that we will be finalizing after our meeting here today, for the Brenham campus, all of the projects are shown on the ultimate 20-year plan for this campus, but we'll be developing, incremental plans that show the growth and implementation of projects for each of those phases for the final document. But in phase 1, there are 2, actually, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm going to start at the bottom at this slide because we've listed out under in progress several of the projects that we heard about from the Chancellor earlier today that will come online during phase 1 of the master plan. So the first of those is the new STEI building. We also have the new P3 student housing project on the south side of campus that'll bring online about 500 beds. Then what we're calling Dreyer Field Part 1, which is the renovation of your existing clubhouse associated with the baseball field and construction of a new clubhouse right there adjacent to the existing one. And the Spencer Fieldhouse demolition is also planned and in progress, as we've already heard. So in terms of new construction projects that are proposed, the first is listed as academic building. Your existing academic building was identified through the FCA as one of the facilities that is in need of pretty significant attention, to the point where the decision was made to go ahead and demolish the existing building, build back a new academic facility that allows you to sort of right size the instruction spaces within it that will then be, well suited to current instructional needs. The other project for new construction identified in this phase is a new student services building, which you see here on the east side of the campus, adjacent to the administration building. The idea here is that many of the student services that are currently located on floors 1 and 2 of this building will relocate to their own facility in this new building. As we move into renovation, the renovation category, the first one we have listed here is Old Main. The plan is to do HVAC system upgrades in that building, full interior renovation to provide new faculty and staff offices, as well as a meeting center within that building. The next project listed is the Mill Creek Hall Esports facility. That involves the renovation, conversion of 2 existing classrooms at the ground floor of that building to create an esports arena with gaming and competition stations, a lounge, basically to provide a facility that is on par with the esports arena being built at the RELLIS campus as a part of that phase 2 building. Next project identified is renovation of Melcher Hall. So this is a full building interior and exterior renovation of that facility based on the needs identified in the FCA. Number 6 on this list is the Bullock Center Central Plant. So this is a significant rehabilitation of the HVAC system associated with the central plant portion of that facility. So it's replacement of chillers and pumps, and also a new cooling tower proposed. Next project is the administration building. So as we've said, with most of the services currently located on levels 1 and 2 of this building planned to move into their own facility after that new building comes online. The idea is that many of the administrative offices currently located in Old Main would move onto floors 1 and 2 of this building. And the last renovation project listed under phase 1 is Dreyer Field Part 2. So that involves the renovation of the press box, concession stands, and restrooms over at Dreyer Field. Moving into the enhancement projects category, we have a couple identified in phase 1. The first of those is the College Avenue street and sidewalk realignment. So that project is really a 3-block length of College Avenue from Green Street to Blinn Boulevard. We're proposing that the angled parking along that length of the street be removed and sort of be recaptured for new wider sidewalks and additional street trees to really enhance the pedestrian experience along that length of College Avenue. It would also involve some demolition of the retaining wall on the south side of that street and regrading so that a continuous sidewalk could be built along the south side of College Avenue and make that more pedestrian friendly as well. The other enhancement project is 2 new monument signs, one that you would see as you're approaching the campus from the south along Prairie Lee Street, and the other you would see approaching the campus from the north along Blinn Boulevard from West Main Street. I think that covers everything here. In terms of demolitions identified for this phase, it's several of the residence halls, as we mentioned earlier, that are in greatest need: Holloman Hall, Memorial Hall, Solons Hall, K. Atkinson Hall, and a couple of other facilities, as we mentioned, the academic building, and also the Small Business Development Center. Some significant needs were identified for that building as well. And the plan, once that building comes offline, is that the SBDC would be relocated to available space in the Hodie Center. That takes us to phase 2, looking at the next 5 years out. New construction projects identified for this phase include a new communications and data center located nice and centrally at the core of your campus. We are also proposing a new P3 residence hall that would have about 300 beds and also come with the associated parking for those beds. The third project is a dining annex, also located on this same central block of your campus core that would provide a secondary dining option on your campus that is easily accessed both from the the new P3 housing that's on the south side, as well as that a new housing that is proposed as a part of this phase of the master plan. In terms of renovations, we're looking back at the Bullock Center, this time at interior renovations focused on the academic space in that facility, and also at exterior envelope improvements to bring the appearance of that building more in line with the other buildings around it on your campus. We also have a project for the O'Donnell Center entry. So this is focused on renovation and expansion of that building's lobby, as well as a new covered entry drop-off. At the physical education building, that renovation is focused on some staff offices and interior renovation there. And at the Heineke Gymnasium, that project is really focused on some restroom upgrades. Renovations at the Bohm Building are associated with both the exterior envelope, full sort of interior renovation focused on both finishes and systems. The enhancement projects that we've identified for phase 2 include the green space at Spencer Field. You'll see once we get to the demolitions that the demolition of the practice field and the track are identified to be demolished in phase 2. So once that occurs, that space will be converted into a nice open lawn space that can be used for recreation or large group outdoor events. Next project is a pedestrian mall at West 3rd and High Street. So that's 2-block length of road by 2 blocks in the other direction. This area is already limited for vehicular access right now using bollards and access gates. So the idea is to really just amp up the pedestrian experience there with some, nice paving material rather than just regular street. Addition of some nice new site furnishings and lightings, shade trees, to really make this a highlight, sort of a promenade at the core of your campus. And finally, the last project here is the Higgins Branch Trail South. My gosh, did I just jump over a couple of? I did. I jumped way over some of the new construction projects. So I'll get back to those. I apologize. And there's some big ones. Going back to 4A, sports and intramural zone. So this is proposed on the west side of your campus. It includes a new turf football practice field, soccer practice field, softball practice field, a chipping and putting green for the golf team, as well as a new field house with locker rooms and training facilities, and an auxiliary storage facility as well. In tandem with this facility, we've identified the access road that would get you there as a separate new construction project as well. So that would tie into the existing roundabout up here on the north and connect back in at Appel Way at the south side. And other new construction project I skipped over was a parking lot expansion. This will add about 100 new parking spaces at the current site of Solon's Hall. So getting back to the bottom of our list here, the Higgins Branch Trail, this will come online in 2 phases. The first southern portion comes online in this phase so that it can provide pedestrian access from sort of the campus as it exists today over to this new sports and intramural zone on the west side of the campus. Demolitions for this phase, we've already talked through some of them. First, Spencer Field and Track will come offline. Several other residence halls will come offline in this phase: Buccaneer Hall, Lockett Hall, and Rachel Spencer Hall, and the classroom building will come offline in this phase as well. Looking at the final phase of development for the Brenham campus, we have one new construction project identified. This is a second P3 residence hall. This one will accommodate about 375 beds. The renovation project identified in phase 3 is for the student center. This is interior renovation of most portions of that building, I think, except for those that have most recently been renovated, like the dining area of that space. So that would be upgrades to finishes, some reallocation of space, including incorporating the health clinic into the student center as your existing health clinic facility comes offline. Enhancement projects identified in this phase include another new monument sign. This one you would see approaching the campus from the east along College Avenue. Upgrades to the band practice facility. This would include installation of a turf surface there. These next two student center quad improvements and Wheeler Hall quad improvements are quite similar. It really gets at providing some additional programming there and enhancing the look and feel of those spaces to make them more appealing for students to use and occupy. So that's providing some additional seating areas, shade trees, site furnishings, and the like. The North Campus Recreation Area and Amphitheater, that's this area sort of north of Mill Creek Hall and the Cruzy Center. So this would involve clearing some of the vegetation to make that available for recreation and possibly intramural use, and also includes a small outdoor amphitheater for student performance. Then we see the second part of the Higgins Branch Trail come online, connecting north of Old Mill Creek Road to some of those new facilities on the north side of your campus. And the final project that is identified as some streetscape improvements, specifically along Blinn Boulevard and Old Mill Creek Road. Mostly this is associated with providing continuous sidewalks so that pedestrians can move more freely and safely along those thoroughfares. But we've also proposed some planting enhancements and upgrades and the addition of a new planted median along one block of Blinn Boulevard. Demolitions identified for phase 3, again, this was 10 to 20 years out, include Hellman Hall, Hallstein Hall, the Arts and Sciences Building, Beasley Hall, the Health Clinic, and the rental properties that are along Green Street at West 5th on that block where Spencer Field currently is. So that gets us through the projects identified for the Brenham campus, and this, to wrap that up, is an overall aerial view of the campus with all of the master plan projects implemented about 20 years out. Keep moving and look next at the Bryan campus. In phase 1, new construction projects identified include a new administration and student services building. This would come in at the north side of the Bryan campus, and the idea is that many of the functions that are currently housed off campus at the Tejas Center would be brought on campus at this new facility. We would also move some of the functions that are currently in your building S, like HR, campus administration, campus police. That would also move into this new facility as well. The other new construction project associated with that new building is an internal road extension to provide access to that new building and to a new campus entrance at Nash Street. We have one renovation project proposed in phase 1 at Bryan. That is a library renovation and 10,000 square foot expansion, which would provide additional study and meeting space in your library. In terms of enhancement projects, we are proposing the first of 2 parts of what we're calling the South Campus pedestrian connection. The idea being that we want to provide sort of an elevated experience as students walk through this large parking lot to their cars and actually eventually all the way out to East 29th Street. So it's a nice planted median, again, with shade trees, and a wide sidewalk for safe pedestrian use. The next project is library quad improvements that would come online in association with that library renovation. So again, elevating the look and feel of that quad. One of the things that we've discussed specific to this space is the potential to incorporate sort of a identifying landmark or a piece of public art that could really be sort of an iconic moment on this campus and something that you would see as you're entering on access, either along Blinn Boulevard or off of Joseph Drive. We also have a North Monument sign proposed in this phase that would, of course, come online with that new campus entrance at Nash Street. And there are a couple of building demolitions identified in this phase as well. I've already mentioned that some of the functions from Building S would be relocated into the new admin and student services building, so that Building S would come offline. And also, in order for this new construction to occur, the existing church and small-scale commercial facilities that are currently located on this site would be demolished as well. Moving into phase 2, we have one new project identified in this phase. That is a fine arts and academic building located close to the entrance off of Blinn Boulevard. The intent here is to co-locate all of the various fine arts programs on the Bryan campus into this building, as well as several of the other academic functions from some of the buildings that have been identified for demolition during this phase. So those are Building B, where you currently have faculty offices, Building R, which houses the distance learning suite, and Building T with some large-scale classrooms. So all of that goes into the new fine arts and academic building, as well as some of your other current functions like the ceramics lab currently in Building J and the Black Box Theater currently located in your student center. Moving into renovations, of course, we have the student center renovation listed, and that is really a backfill project. As the Black Box Theater is moved out of that space, we would come back in and provide a new student meeting and lounge type space to increase that type of offering within the student center. The physical plant expansion and conversion project would be located where the current ceramics lab is. Once that, again, moves into the new fine arts facility, the idea is that this would become your new physical plant. In terms of enhancement projects, so in this phase, you see the completion of that pedestrian access through the parking lot that has been sort of realigned for more efficient circulation. That extends now all the way out to East 29th Street. The next project is the Blinn Boulevard entrance improvements and monument sign. One of the things that came out of the visioning and the planning discussions for this campus was the need to really emphasize where the front door is for the Bryan campus. So that's part of what this project gets at, is to really amp up the experience as you come in off of Blinn Boulevard, and of course mark that with a new monument sign there as well. We've also identified a monument sign location at the corner of East 29th Street and Joseph Drive. So we're sort of providing a "you are here" moment from approaching from that side of the campus. Student center quad improvements, again, associating that with the student center renovation. We heard that there is a need for some additional outdoor plaza space to accommodate some of the activity fair type of events that occur in association with the student center. So that's a large part of what is proposed there. And then finally, we show some intramural fields coming online on the north side of campus. A regulation-sized soccer field would go in at the base of current detention basin side of the campus, as well as a new intramural softball field. We've covered all of those projects, and moving to phase 3. We have a couple projects coming in here as well. One new construction project, the Fitness and Activity Center. And this really gets to, again, one of the goals that was stated during the master plan process of elevating the campus experience, helping to keep students on campus when they have time in between classes. So this sort of gives them the opportunity for some other recreational type of activities right there on campus. In conjunction with that, we've proposed a Briar Creek Trail Loop. So this would create a closed loop for walking and jogging on your campus, tying into the existing sidewalks that are already there to loop around the creek and the intramural fields, and again, along the creek here as well. And finally, the last project identified is the North and West Streetscape improvements. This is really aimed at enhancing the look and feel of the roads, and especially the bus route along what is sort of perceived as the backside of campus. So it's focused mainly on adding some additional street trees and decorative plantings to enhance that part of your campus as well. Okay, so again, looking at that overview of your BRYAN campus, 20 years out with all of the master plan projects implemented, this is what it would look like. Move next to the RELLIS campus. We've talked already a bit about the administration building that is already under construction, so that's in progress. And for phase 1, there are no additional new master plan projects identified on this campus. In phase 2, we see a third building come online with additional academic and support space. This would finish out the streetscape along Bryan Road. And in conjunction with that, we would build out the remaining area of faculty parking on your campus. And finally, in phase 3, we see 2 more buildings coming online to finish out that sort of middle portion of your campus. And then here in the middle, we're proposing an open green space with a water feature to provide some visual relief, but also some space for some student recreation and can accommodate outdoor gatherings as well. Oops. So again, there's your 20-year outlook overview of the RELLIS campus. As I mentioned earlier, the discussion about the Schulenburg and Sealy campuses is a little bit of a different one because we haven't proposed new master plan projects for the campus based on what we've seen in terms of the low utilization and really no growth projected in terms of enrollment. This is really sort of a strategic conversation to be had here. So what we've done is we've outlined some considerations for each of those campuses and also what we see as some possible future scenarios that may play out for the board's consideration going forward. So some of these considerations we've already talked about in terms of no growth and declining enrollment at Schulenburg and low classroom utilization. In terms of financial support, we understand that local tax support has recently been reduced. You know, I think it is an important consideration that Blinn owns this property, but if this campus were to close, the sale of the property could help to offset land acquisition costs elsewhere or fund future development within the district. So as we see it, there are 3 sort of main scenarios to be explored. The first is to maintain the status quo, continue your operations and course offerings in your current location that you own in Schulenburg. The second option is to evolve, continue to operate in your current location, but assess and adjust your course offerings to maybe appeal and coordinate to, appeal to more students through coordinating with the community and local industry and area ISDs. The third option that we've outlined is no campus, to close the Schulenburg campus and continue to support the community through online instruction in that area. Moving next to the Sealy campus. Again, the outline of considerations is somewhat similar. Again, we're looking at little to no enrollment growth, low current utilization. It was a strategic move to locate here in that it is sort of the district's gateway along I-10, and there is westward expansion projected for this area coming from the Houston area, but it just has not yet borne out in terms of seeing the type of enrollment that maybe was originally hoped. We also understand that there is no local tax support coming from the Sealy area for Blinn as well. So in terms of those future scenarios, again, the first one is to maintain the status quo, continue to operate in the current location with your current course offerings. The next option would be to relocate to a new location. This is leased space, so you could consider finding a new location within Sealy that might appeal to more students and I think align more closely with Blinn's identity and brand. The third option is to close the Sealy campus and, as I said, with Schulenburg, continue to serve this community through online course offerings. So these are sort of big strategic and operational decisions that go beyond sort of just the physical facilities that we're addressing here in the master plan. We have outlined these considerations in the master plan report for you to consider as you make plans for these campuses going forward. The last topic that we want to address and that we've covered a bit in the master plan is the possibility of future district expansion. So similar to what you saw with the Sealy and Schulenburg campuses, we've listed out some considerations and possible future scenarios here as well. First option is to maintain your status quo, continue to operate your 5 existing campuses, and focus on continuous improvement without building a new 6th campus. Option 2 is status quo plus expansion. So continue to operate your 5 existing campuses, but also expand the district's footprint with a new 6th campus in a growing high potential location within Blinn's service area. Final option is what we call a repositioned footprint, wherein the district would focus on its high-performing campuses, BRENHAM, BRYAN, and RELLIS, consider closing the Sealy and or the Schulenburg campuses, and then expand with a new campus in a growing high-potential location. So for all of these scenarios, I think some of the considerations include that the level of civic and financial support that could be anticipated from the community. We know that external partners and strategic alliances with other institutions will be very important. We've already talked a lot about potential growth, which will also be important. And the impact on the district's brand, as well as its financials in terms of return on investment are, of course, important considerations as well. So as a part of this discussion, facilities programming and consulting helped us to take a look at a hypothetical 6th campus scenario. What you see on this map, the darkest blue tones indicate the areas with the highest projected population growth for that sort of target 18 to 64 age cohort. So looking at your service area boundary, We see some of that darker blue tone occurring at the southeast portion of your service area. So we've looked at a hypothetical 6-campus location focused in that area, in or around Waller. And again, we're working with some starting assumptions here, but if we were to open a campus in that location in 2026 with a starting population of about 15 students, FP&C is projecting enrollment growth of about 2% year over year, which would result in an additional 500 plus student headcount getting to 2040. So again, this is not the location or the answer for how your district might grow into the future, but it does help to start that conversation. And I think that it shows that there is some potential there. So that's all we have for you today. I know it's quite a bit to digest, so thank you for bearing with me. As we said, after today, we'll go back and finalize our report and deliver it for your consideration and approval next month.
Right.
Thanks very much, and we're happy to answer any questions you might have.
As I understand now, we'll need to take action next month on this, on receiving this report. And I would assume y'all will be here then, and there'll be some opportunities to maybe ask questions and talk even then. But so leading up to that, is there any questions that anyone has here as of today that they'd like to have answered? Or let me look this way over here.
Feeling a little shell shock.
All right, go ahead, Mr. Bowler.
Very detailed report, by the way. Information overload for one meeting, but well done. But I as you were going through the presentation, let me see if I can find where this is in here somewhere. Starting with the district-wide enrollment. I think, and I could be reading this wrong, you're saying by 2030, we'll have nearly 18,200 students on a district-wide basis. Am I
That's
looking at
correct.
that correctly?
That's correct.
Well, I'm a little confused because at the end of 2018-19, I think our district-wide enrollment was about 19,412 students.
Meredith, would you clarify for him the difference between the face-to-face enrollment and the virtual enrollment?
That's right.
Thank you.
So again, the enrollment numbers that we have looked at for this study are focused on campus or face-to-face enrollees and hybrid enrollment. So that's students who are attending both on campus in combination with some percentage of online classes. So I think that the discrepancy is that the numbers that you're looking at would include 100% online attendance as well.
Okay. Because I was confused. So we're talking about physical enrollment. It would be nice to know what that number was back in 2018-19, because I was comparing it to a number that we've been publishing. So I'm glad you cleared that up. And again, most of them know me as a guy who starts putting numbers together and everything else of that nature. So I was thinking about a little further on, we said we're going to, my word is cap enrollment at the current BRYAN campus of about 9,500. We then are proposing, or it's appearing that they're going to be about a total of 5 buildings on the RELLIS campus. And I just assumed about 2,000 per building there. So that puts the total enrollment over there over this period of time to about 19,500. But this number says 19,600. So I'm just confused with that, because that doesn't include enrollment that we have already here and its growth there. So I may be, overestimating the numbers in those buildings or something, but you would think that the growth would be greater than what's being
Let me see if I can
illustrated from that
quickly
perspective.
reference my cheat sheet here. those enrollment numbers for the RELLIS campus.
And again, I don't necessarily need an answer today, but I mean, it's just that I don't want us to underestimate our growth in one area, and then in the other area, we've got much larger numbers. So I don't need an answer today, but I was just intuitively kind of putting those numbers together and coming up with something a little different. I'm sure there's a reason, but those are just a couple of things that came out during the course of your reputation. And another thing that's of your presentation, another thing is that I know most of the growth projections that you've come up with have kind of have some historical movement of, you take historical movement and you extend that to what's probably going to be.
That's right.
And one of the things that I don't think anybody's actually in these numbers is there appears to be, from what I've been reading and everything else, what I call a COVID impact on our general area, which from what I've been reading is saying that the growth projections are probably going to exceed what may have been something that is occurring from, I guess you could say, a historical perspective. So I was just curious if there's anything that y'all may have seen to date that may point to maybe this growth is maybe even more rapid than what you've come up with.
I would have to defer to our consultant, FTNC, on that. And I think we do have a representative on the line. So Molly, feel free to chime in if you have something to add. But we have accounted for those, the impact of COVID in the growth projection. So
Okay.
We are looking at, some period of recovery to get back to sort of the pre-COVID numbers as a part of the projections that we've prepared.
Again, having seen this for the first time, I'm sure I will come up with additional questions. I don't want to belabor this and take any more additional time, but Mr. Chairman, I'm sure there are others who have questions, so I will.
You might want to get your email. I think you're going to be pretty busy between now and next month, so. Dr. Krausen has a question or a comment.
Yeah, just some, I guess, digging down into like the Brenham campus, things that you brought up. I was a little surprised at two things. One is the new student services building. Can you kind of talk about that again and what's going to be replacing those groups here in this building?
Yes. So it's kind of a game of dominoes in a way, where we'd be providing that new student services building fairly close to this administration building that we're in today, give them their own separate home. The idea is that there would be a student services suite at the ground level of that facility, and then more office type space on the upper levels. Then once that comes online, some of the administrative offices that are currently located in Old Main would relocate into the space vacated in levels 1 and 2 of this facility. And then once that space is opened up in Old Main, that's when that renovation would occur and create some new faculty and staff offices, as well as a meeting center.
So that was kind of my end question, is what happens to Old Main? So, okay. My second, and thank you. My second thing is, I was a little surprised to see that the remodeling of the student center was pretty far down, phase 3. That building is not in real good shape, although we remodeled the cafeteria here a couple of years ago. The rest of the building is in pretty bad foundational shape. I mean, what is it going to last another 10 years, I guess is my question. So.
I would have to go back and dig into some of the details from that facility condition assessment. I think really what was driving that is the fact that there were some more urgent needs identified elsewhere on the campus. And so we focused on addressing those most urgent needs in phase one and then phase two of the master plan. But as we've said, this is a flexible plan, so that's not to say that the renovation of the student center could not happen sooner.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had.
Okay. Anyone else? Jim, you've been a part of this, I think, ongoing process. Any thoughts or comments?
Well, I probably have a bit of a disadvantage in that I've gotten to see a lot of this stuff along the way a little bit more. So I probably have fewer questions, or you guys may have questions for me at some point. But no, it's been a very methodic process. Commend these guys for what they put into it. And again, this is not, just coming from Gensler. This is from a lot of input from people on campus, professors, stakeholders, and that type of thing. So that's where these priorities came from.
Thanks.
Randy, Mr. Wells, you got any thoughts or questions?
Still processing a lot, but also I see the demolition of the old stadium, but I don't hear anything about projection of a new stadium in a master plan. And that's just a general community deal.
Right, so we've proposed the construction of a new football practice field on that new Western Sports and Intramural Zone. And Dr. Hensley, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding is that the idea is that for competition, Blinn would be partnered with the local ISD to play the games in that stadium.
Yes, that's correct. Trustees, the current thinking is that we would continue to partner with BRENHam ISD for the use of their stadium for game days. But that this new facility in what we're referring to as the 30 acres would become an athletic and sports area for this campus. And it would have the softball area, soccer practice area. It would have a field practice for the football team. And then in the field house, for lack of a different term to call that, it would house the coach's offices, workout space, and it would provide a locker room or space for soccer, softball, football, golf, everything except basketball, which would still remain housed out of the Cruzy Center. Thank you.
Ms. Ayler, do you have any questions?
I do, but there's too many.
No, not too many.
Turn that on. I was just curious because I know we talked about it the last time we talked about the whole plan. Do we know where the students are going that we want to go to Sealy and Schulenburg? Because I know there seems to be a lot more growth over in the Waller area, which we talked about, but I'm just like, why aren't students coming to those campuses?
I don't know that we've specifically addressed that as a part of this study. I can go back again to our team and see if we have any more information that we can offer on that.
Because it seems like if we're looking at should we keep them or not, that might be good information to know. So I'm wondering, are they going to Lone Star? Are they going to ACC? Where are they going if they're not coming to this district?
Okay.
Great question.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we actually got to that level of thinking as Meredith had suggested. Our thinking is, and it's very unscientific, is that with HCC opening their brand new Katy campus, and it's right down I-10 from your area, that's going to be a part of it. So you have a lot of competition from those areas. Also, Sealy and Schulenburg are in very rural, low density populations. So you don't have a lot of people feeding in. And if they're going to be coming from long away areas like many of your students do, they're just going to go all the way to Brenham and go to a full campus. You know, those two installations, you know, one's in a leased retail center that's basically empty, and the other one is in your own facilities. There's not a lot of people to feed in locally to those areas. So you have a lot of competition from Austin Community College and from HCC and Lone Star all along the edges. And as was said in the presentation, we see potential growth coming west down I-10 towards Sealy, but we also don't see the housing starts and the information we've received from the local ISDs where we get our capture rate that we figure out what the growth is. We're just not seeing a big increase, and in some cases, a decrease in the population to draw from in those areas.
Because the other question I have about that, and you can probably answer that, is there dual enrollment in those two areas? Or
Yes,
are
and
they-
thank you. That's a good question, trustee. Most of the enrollment that we're getting is dual enrollment
Okay, that's what I'm
out of those
wondering.
two locations. And if you reflect back on the map that Meredith and Alan showed you, when you think of the dark gray and the light gray areas, it's light gray over into the Schulenburg and the Sealy area. So that just the corpus of potential enrollment is very slim in those two locations. And projected to be completely flat for the next 20 years, or essentially flat.
I have one other question.
All right.
I really have a lot more, but I'm not gonna get into. No, I was just curious because we talked about the library and maybe it was just renovated and I don't know that. But on this campus, since we're looking 20 years out, is the library, I mean, that wasn't even mentioned in anything. So I was just curious about that.
Right, again, it was not flagged as one of the facilities on this campus with the greatest needs. And in terms of looking at the space that you have, that also appeared to be adequate from the studies that we
Okay.
did. So that's not to say that you might not embark on a renovation just to refresh that space, but we didn't identify it as one of the greatest needs on this campus.
And 2 years ago, we did completely gut that building.
That's what I was wondering, 'cause I'm like, it's not coming up. on
Yes,
here.
and we
Okay.
set a budget for it and completely renovated the library building. So that's, would not be rising high on the priority list as compared to some of the other greater needs right now. And if trustees, let me be sure and say that if you have any subsequent questions, please be sure and let me know. We'll be happy to follow up with you, with me or our facility staff or with Gensler on any questions you may have. And then additionally, this is already placed out on OneNote, this presentation, so easily accessible for you there as well.
Will y'all be back next month? Will somebody be here from Gensler next month?
We'll regroup with Richard. I think we had talked previously about attending virtually, but if needed, I'm sure we can
Okay.
arrange to be here.
Well, I really do think there may be opportunities for people to look at this now and then have questions after the fact. And I mean, and they would probably like to be able to ask those questions.
And I think
directly.
once you have the document in hand and have more of the detail there, that may answer several of your questions as well.
Be great.
Trustees, they have developed a couple of documents for us, a multi-page, 100-page plus document, plus an appendix book with all of the detailed background behind all of this that they will plan to present at the May board meeting as well. And again, if you have questions between now and then too, if you'll help us funnel them, we'll be sure and try to have their answers and put out from OneNote so that we're bringing you along as the discussion occurs. And then Alan?
I was just gonna say, but to your question, yes, if the board would like someone here for next month, we will definitely be here to answer any questions.
Well, I'm sure, without a doubt, Mr. Bohart's going to have some questions. Now, it may be that he can exchange some of those questions to you during the course of the month, some way or another. And, you know,
I think it would be best, though, if they do send their questions through the facilities group and through Richard O'Malley, so that we can consolidate all of them and respond in like.
because I think we all benefit. We don't want to admit it, but sometimes we all benefit from his. And it sounds like we may have another Douglas over here now coming on.
Well, I do have one more question, and it has to do with
It's a-
taxes.
but-
Because y'all, can I ask this real quick? Because, I mean, I know Mr. Mosier and I talked about this because our tax rate compared to other districts is very, very low. But what I was surprised at is you said reduced tax rate, somebody did in Schulenburg. Were we pulling taxes from them somehow?
It was a sales, it's part of their sales tax.
Okay, but is everything else just here then?
Right, right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if you will funnel your questions to me, I'll be sure and get them out to the facilities. And then what we'll do, Chair, if this is all right with you, is we'll post the responses and the information on OneNote so we can keep everybody apprised of the conversation.
Having said that, we have some other things to do today. So we're going to go ahead and wrap this up unless somebody has something that's really relevant. That's just.
One thing, Mr. Chairman, I'm curious whether or not this is big for Blinn College, very big. And I'm curious whether or not we might not want to consider a workshop between now and the next board meeting to get into some detail on this, because if not, we're confronted with everything else that is going to be on a board agenda at that time, and so we run short of time. And again, I'm just throwing that out as a possible consideration. So,
You know, I'm open to whatever you, if that's would benefit, if you guys, if we think we'd benefit from that, I'm for that. Now, we have some, and the reason I say that, we have a workshop for May already set up, which is for the budget. And then we're gonna have some discussion on the new, on potential COVID policies for the college as we go forward, stepping past this, into this semester. And I'm sure there's gonna be some discussion on that. So we could include that, but I mean, if we do that, then we need to be prepared to
Stay longer.
yes. And so that's fine with me. All I gotta do is get my social security check in the bank, and that's all I do ever, so for you guys at work or something, it may be an issue. I don't, although some of my fellow members here I know don't work too much either, so. But it'd be fine with me if we'll, let's explore that and see if we can work that out. If it'd be best to do it all at one, or do we want to break it up? And we can look at that. And we'll get back with you.
sorry for that.
Yeah, thank you. All right, thank you so much. We
Good thing.
appreciate it.
We're happy to do that if that's the best course. Thanks very much.
We look forward to putting the ribbon around this next month. So thank you so much.
As do we. Thanks.
Great job. Fantastic day. All right, trustees, let's kind of move along if we could, and we have the consent items. You've been provided the consent agenda. These have to be enacted in one motion. Do I hear a motion that we approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
We have a motion from Reverend Wells. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Mr. Cocors. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you. All right, that gets us to a discussion and possible action item regarding a portion of this new science building. And Mr. Schubert, you going to handle that?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mosier, Chancellor Hensley, and fellow trustees. We have some exciting news in item 6A. As you know, we have the science building well under construction, be opening later before the fall. And we've developed, as we do with all of our buildings, a naming rights package brochure for the different sponsorship levels and those sort of things. And we have had a wonderful development in regards to the science building. Let me just give you a little background from the procedural side. CAM Local, our board policy, requires a couple of things from the board, and it gives the board the exclusive authority to name college facilities. The part of that policy also mentions that any sort of gift given to the college that is over $10,000 must be officially approved and accepted by the board. So we've got a couple of those technical things that we'll be handling here later, but I want to get to the exciting part. We've had a generous donor come forward, Sally Blackie Single, through her Betts West Foundation, has agreed and pledged to have her name placed on the health science portion of the building. It's on the second floor. It's a wonderful dedicated facility for our health sciences. Just a couple of informational pieces for what's in that building area. You have a 900 square foot dedicated nursing classroom. You also have a nurse's station, a debrief conference room, as well as, this is really going to be a phenomenal area, a nursing skills laboratory that's got 10 bays, an IV station, 3 high fidelity skills rooms, really wonderful state-of-the-art facilities for our health science dedicated area. And so through the foundation, the Betts West Foundation, Sally Blackie Single has made a pledge of $500,000 for that naming right, which is in line with our developed naming brochure for this building. And that's going to be paid over 2 years. The college has already received half of that donation, and the other half will be coming next year to round out that donation. And so what we wanted to do is announce this exciting news
thank Sally Blackie Single and the Betts West Foundation. And procedurally, we need you guys as the board to accept that donation and then also grant the naming rights of that portion of the facility as we've described in this. Happy to answer any questions. This is the first large donation for this building. We're going to keep our fingers crossed that there'll be some more coming up for our future buildings, but we did want to bring this one to you right away. So any questions or other comments, happy to answer them.
Here are no questions. Sally's been she's been a great citizen for Washington County. She's donated to a number of projects around the county, been very supportive in many ways, her and her family. So it's great that she's doing this. It's very outstanding. I hear a motion that we approve this naming opportunity for the health science portion of the science, technology, and engineering building. We have a motion. We have a motion from Mr. Bohar. Do I have a second? We have a second from Mrs. Ehlert. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent. Okay, trustees, we'll have an executive session in accordance with action on one of these items. So, does anybody need a break, or do you need, don't look at these younger people, I'll look at the older people, let's just take a quick minute. It's 1:19 now. Let's take a break for five minutes, and then we'll reconvene in here in the executive session, okay? I guess I need to use 5 minutes from now as a time, right?
Go ahead and announce we're breaking to 1:19.
We're taking a break at 1:19. We'll reconvene at 1:25.